Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, how you been, David? It's working. Yeah, the audio is great.
Well, it's perfect for me, but is it recording?
Yeah.
Are you sure
No,
about that?
we're recorded for sure. Always on record. So
Yeah,
I want to
so
I want to really quickly say though, because
Yeah.
it's been a while since we talked. And last time we talked, what, you had like 8 books out, and then I got a message from you had like 15 books out. What is
Yeah,
so?
I've got 15. I'm working on the latest one called Skull and Bones.
Oh, there you go. So nothing too controversial then.
All the books are controversial.
Yeah.
But the thing is, let's start from the beginning. This subject now has become globally known as Tartaria.
Right. Yeah, I got
Now,
I had
many-
Dugan on. Alexander Dugan was talking about Tartaria, and I know Klaus Schwab has brought it up. So it's in the mainstream.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, most people don't have a look. 20 years ago, nobody had heard of this thing until a guy came along called Professor Anatoly Fomenko from Russia, from Moscow State University. He came along and he started mentioning it. And then, but what he did was he spoke about total world history, and he showed world history is a lie. And from the evidence that he presented, what he showed was this. He showed that Jesus Christ probably lived around 900 years ago, maximum about 1100 years ago. This is what he showed. And then he showed the lies in history. It was very simple. He showed it mathematically. They just copied it. Yeah. And they used a mathematical order to copy this history from country to country. Yes. And they put it in different timelines, extending it, repeats in history. Then his work became famous globally. When it became famous globally, many people started to take advantage of it. And then they started advertising it, mud floods, this, that, everything, free energy. And now it's gone out there everywhere. But there is a lot of misinformation on purpose that we don't know. It could be organizations that are linked to historians or other people who are trying to discredit this movement. Now, one, it is not called Tartaria, this civilization. It had several names, that people will have to seriously consider. Some people call it Tartaria. Other historians called it the Kingdom of the Mongols. Yes. Now, Anatoly Fomenko showed that the Old Testament history is actually the history of Europe and Asia. And this history is exactly the same as European history today during the Middle Ages and the history of what they call Tartaria. So some people have started calling this the kingdom of God or the rule of Jesus Christ. Now, another thing that Anatoly Fomenko pointed out was that this history was also similar to the history of the so-called Islamic world that suddenly went worldwide, or these Islamic empires, after the 6th century during the Middle Ages mainly. And so some people call it the caliphate. So really this global civilization doesn't have a name. Yeah, you can call it the kingdom of God. You can actually call it the kingdom of Israel that's written in the Old Testament, or you can call it the caliphate because it's in everybody's history. Yes? So Tartaria has just gone everywhere, but what everybody has forgotten to do is go back to the original evidence that Professor Anatoly Fomenko presented. Now, the biggest things that he presented that anybody can have a look at is that Jesus Christ lived around 1,000 years ago. And then he showed that on average, 1,000 years of fake history were added on. It was him who said it. And now many people are making videos, talking about it, commenting in so many groups online, but nobody is talking, where did this come from? Where is the evidence for this? If you want to see the evidence for this, it's in his books. And I've also put lots of his information and things that I've discovered myself in simple language. It's in many languages. I did it in simple language for the benefit of people who don't have time to have a look deeply into history. But there is a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, lots of lies. Yeah. So
I'd read a bit of pan-Turkism or Turanism. I know that Alexander Dugin had talked about Turanism and Turan as this middle point, because we talk about also, I recently was looking at Peter Fleming's book Tales from Tartary, where Ian Fleming, his younger brother who wrote James Bond, he has this note at the beginning where he says, Tartary is not strictly a geographical term, and more than Christendom, or any more than Christendom is. Tartary is where the Tartars come from to Har, Europe and Asia. And there were so many different kinds of Tartars that the name has at one point or another held good for almost all the lands outside the Great Wall, from the Caspian
I will make
to Korea.
that very simple. I will make this very simple. Now, around 1,000 years ago, the church and its allies invaded Europe. I call it an invasion because they went all over Europe with inquisitions. When people think of inquisition, they think of Spain. No, there were inquisitions in Scandinavia.
Absolutely.
The church and its allies did inquisitions in Russia. They confiscated every single book in the Russian Empire in the 17th and 18th century. There were inquisitions in Germany, in Holland, in England, in France, in Bohemia, Czech Republic.
There was even the
Romania.
Gnostics had inquisitions against them waged because of the different groups of Christians.
What they've done is they've just used complicating names, like, for example, in the Middle East, they're Arabs. But what they're going to do is they're going to use words that are difficult for you to understand, saying, hey, there's this group here, that group there, this and that group. When we're talking about Iraqis, they're just Arabs. Yeah, when we're talking about Americans, it's going to be difficult.
Well, that's why I was bringing up pseudo-Turkology, because in the 19th century, there was a movement that was somewhat similar, and at least it had, the connections to Christianity in old Armenia and Istanbul or Constantinople as this source city connecting Damascus, and where Christianity was more European. This origin story that Jesus was in a European background, but also the Turkish background.
Now, when people say it was European,
exactly.
What Anatoly Fomenko pointed out, it was more Euro-Asian, that he shows. If we have a look at where Europe is and where is Constantinople and Moscow, or Istanbul and Moscow, then it means that Europe is west from these two places.
Yeah, and so the Persians also didn't pronounce the R. So they talk about Tatar or Tata versus the Tartar.
Now, I will make it simple. It's like when you say the word Polska, it means Polish and then ka. When you say Turka, it means Tur and then ka. When you say Turan or Medi-Turan, middle of Turan, the word Turan basically means people of the Torah.
Interesting.
Yes. So eventually, what happened is that when nationalism was created by the world order in the 19th century, what they did was they created this crazy pan-Turanism, and the Turkish language was invented. It's like, for example, ben çok iyi biliyorum Turkish abi. Sen biliyor musun konuşmak Turkish? See?
Wow.
I studied Turkish, but then again, I studied Japanese. Watashi wa nihonjin honto desu ka? Wakarimashite. I studied Chinese too. And yes, yes, so I studied many languages because I wanted to get to the bottom of languages. But then again, so now Tartaria is like tar and then tar on repeat.
In ancient Iranian mythology, they referred to Tur as the son of the emperor Faridun. But
now, if we're going to get to mythology, that's why the thing is, Anatoly Fomenko's books are important, but I made it simple. And in my new book, it's in the Renaissance book, but I'm updating that. If anybody sees that online, don't buy it. I'm updating it in my Skulls and Bones book, which is going to be ready within 2 weeks. Now, the thing is, what people don't realize is you can check even online. Most of the world's manuscripts from the Middle Ages, are actually in places like the British libraries, British Museum Library,
Codex, and
or the National Bibliothèque de France, or in the Vatican Museum libraries, or in a few smaller libraries like the Clementinum Library and a few others. Now, what most people don't realize is that when you check, you can check And they can't hide it because many people remember it, especially in the Balkans, that the church and its allies did all these inquisitions and they confiscated everyone's books in the last
Right.
4, 5, 6 centuries. And then they rewrote history with their monks, the Jesuits, and everybody else. For example, almost all the universities in Europe, especially that's west from Ukraine, all the universities in Europe were set up by the Roman Catholic Church. And their allies, when I say their allies, they made agreements in the 15th and 16th century with the Habsburg royal families and others who eventually set up the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, and the French Empire, and the Dutch Empire. They made agreements to divide the world. This is not hidden. Yeah, these agreements are still available today. Now, what they did is they went everywhere, they confiscated books. Like if you check the Indian subcontinent, which is as big as Europe, the British, French, Spanish, and the Dutch collected all these so-called Sanskrit manuscripts, yeah, that nobody knows where they found them from. They're in two places mainly, in Varanasi, in a library over there, and in Pune city near Mumbai. Now, when you check them all, you'll think, what the hell's going on? The British found all these manuscripts. Many of them, they couldn't translate them, and you'll hear official stories. Like there's an Indian man who worked for the British colonial authorities. He found out how to translate, for example, an ancient Indian Sanskrit manuscript because he found the key in a dream. He dreamt it at night. Yes.
That sounds very
This
Mormon.
is how they found out to translate these so-called Sanskrit documents. So when you look through all of this history, you'll find that all these myths, everything, and mysteriously we've got records of them in Latin and Greek. Yeah, and in India they've got them in Sanskrit. Yeah, for the East, in the Middle East, they've got them in Hebrew. What you can check is that Hebrew was a dead language that mysteriously came to life 2,000 years later. Yeah, in the 19th century. Latin is a dead language since the Roman Empire. Greek is a dead language. All these mysterious books in libraries were written in dead languages that nobody can speak.
It's interesting how many of these books I've been looking into the British libraries and everything like Beowulf, etc. It's all we found it in the Shakespeare's tutor brought it to the Knoll Codex, and then it was the 17th century. There was a fire.
Who are these people?
Well, Ed de Vere. I meant Ed de Vere, but
How
you know
do
what I
you
mean.
know Shakespeare existed?
Well,
They told us.
Ed de Vere needed a fall guy. I was talking to Alexander Warr recently about this idea that Shakespeare is just kind of a cover story for this new language because they had to get rid of Frisian, Anglo-Frisian. The way people spoke before Shakespeare was introduced was different.
Okay, you can mention Shakespeare now. If you went to another in France, they will say Victor Hugo. Wherever you go, they'll mention Tolstoy in Russia. Now,
yeah, the thing is, what's up with Hugo? Because 2,400 pages of Les Miserables, and it's literally everything. Is it really one guy?
Now, the thing is, when you check most of these books, mysteriously, they're all in the hands of like what all these so-called museums mysteriously have them all. Like people mention the Babylonian Talmud, or known as the Munich Talmud, Codex Hebraicus. Where are these books? They're in the Vatican. Where is the Mishnah Torah? It's in the British Museum. Yes. What the hell is it doing there? Oh, mysteriously, the Jews gave up their books and they gave it to the Vatican or to the British Museum. Yeah, so we can go through these. It's like when you go through the Portuguese Mishnah Torah. Let me just mention a few very fast. Where is it? In the British Museum. The Samaritan manuscripts, which are in the catalogue of Hebrew, they're in the British Museum. Manuscripts Hebrew de Lisbon, British Museum. You can just go on and on. Yeah, and when you go through them all, you start to think, what are they all doing in the same place?
Right.
And then there's the Sota Talmud. The Sota Talmud, you'll find that in the British Museum.
Then there's the Nag Hammadi.
You've got similar books like the Talmud. Yeah. These Islamic books that have similar Sharia law. Yeah, when you start looking for them, you find them in the British Museum or in the French Museum. In the Vatican Museum.
That the Nag Hammadi didn't come out until 1945 is very telling. That we don't know anything about alternative Christian sects except for this book from 1945.
Now, I was a crazy student when I was young. I ordered copies of the translation of the Nag Hammadi scrolls, and the Dead Sea Scrolls when I was 17, 18 years old. A professor in California called Robert Eisenman was translating these things. I went through them from that age because I thought, I want to know what's going on here. Now,
As
I
you do.
found something strange. Yeah. What was strange is that, hey, these things were mysteriously found, yeah, at the time they set up the State of Israel, to justify that the State of Israel or the ancient
Interesting.
Israelites existed in the Middle East in that region. Yeah. So the thing is, Professor Anatoly Fomenko also showed it was just political, or these manuscripts are not old at all. They're going to find more discoveries like this all over the world. Same like they found the great statue of Buddha in Afghanistan that mysteriously the local people didn't find it. And they found it when the Americans invaded. And they say local people were involved. So it's like it's very suspicious history that they found the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Scrolls, and half of them don't mention the existence of Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
In other words, it was a Jewish civilization with no existence of Jesus Christ. So a lot of it is just political. Yes.
Right.
Same like most people have never read Josephus, but Josephus's documents mysteriously don't mention Jesus Christ, and they're from around the oldest copies. They will say from the 15th or 14th century, but to me, it looks like 17th century. But I read that when I was 17, 18.
Mm.
Josephus writes Jewish Antiquities and the Jewish War.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read it
but
because
it's
I wanted
interesting
to know
not
from a young age.
reflect on Jesus. What does Josephus say in his history of post-Roman, or even just interim of Jesus's period?
Now, this is the thing. That Josephus's history is similar to the Old Testament. Similar, but not the same. Now, the mysterious thing is what people don't realize is that the Bible, it starts from Adam and Eve and then mysteriously ends at Maccabees. Now, Maccabees, some people call it Apocrypha. It's removed by some churches. But mysteriously, this is the history of religion from Adam and Eve to Maccabees. And then mysteriously, we've got the New Testament. Now, when you go through that, yeah, what Professor Anatoly Fomenko pointed out, yeah, the second biggest thing, or in the top two biggest things he pointed out, was that he said the Quran actually says that Jesus Christ, yeah, his mother is called Mary, and then it says in another place in the same book that Mary is the sister of Aaron and the sister of Moses, the prophet. So Anatoly Fomenko, then he goes through the historical timeline and he shows that Moses lived around the same time as Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ was the successor of Moses. Now, many people don't seem to imagine, and they've got some strange imagination, because what historians say, they think the word Jesus comes from the word Joshua, and nobody ever checks this. You must have heard that many times, yes?
Yeah, Yeshua, right?
Yeah. Okay. Now, if Jesus was known as Joshua in the Middle Ages in Europe, then why is the Society of Jesus, for example, Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, why are they called in Latin Societas Esu or Isa?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Esau. Wow.
Yeah, because in Latin it's called
brutal.
Isa. And why do they call him Jesu
Because
in
in
Italian
Latin
today?
it begins with an I. Indiana Jones screams.
Yes,
Yeah.
the letter J was introduced.
Okay, let's expand on that,
16th
because I
century.
think we just both had a nice moment, but I don't know if everyone else got what that meant. So, does everyone know who Esau is? Do you want to explain in the biblical sense?
Okay. Now, Jesus Christ, you can check in English until the 18th century was called Isu. They pronounced it Isu in England. This is, you can even check on Wikipedia, because many people's grandparents passed this history down. Then the letter J was introduced by the Jesuits and the Catholic Church. They introduced it in the 16th century, but nobody started using it until the 18th century, because when you have somebody introduce it, same like they introduced passports, but half the world still doesn't use passports. Half the world's people still don't have a passport or identification card. It takes time. It's been 100 years already since they invented their
and nicknames and
system.
things, right? Like, because I think in like
So
Joseph in Italian, you can say Beppe, and it's like, so you're saying you think it's plausible that Esau, the older brother of the eldest son of Isaac and the older brother of Jacob, right?
Jacob. Yeah,
Is
I'll get
that's
to that.
okay?
I'll
I'm too
get
excited.
to it. So now the Society of Jesus is called Societas Isa. Yes, and the Muslims in the Quran actually say that Jesus is called Isa. But now the thing is, when you look at the Old Testament, or what is known as the Tanakh, the Tanakh is the place where Moses, his successor, is mentioned. His successor is called, and Osa, it says that his nickname is Joshua. Yes.
Wow. And then there's the real
So
Joshua
many.
who takes over after
So
Moses.
Joshua's name is not even Joshua, even in the Bible, but nobody bothers to read it.
But is
And
wait,
it's
Joshua is
also,
sorry, is Moses' Joshua, or is that not Joshua?
yeah, Joshua is a nickname. It says
Okay.
that Moses called him Joshua. That was his
Yeah, he
nickname. He
called him
called him.
Joshua. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, same like you're in America. Many people probably call you Andrew.
Yeah, or they call me nicknames by accident, like Smurf or something. But America's weird. So if
Oh, that's a
Joshua is a
cool name,
nickname, it's
actually.
Muhammad was the sweet one you were saying in our last talk.
Now there's more to it. It's
Yeah,
like
it's a title.
if you go to Israel today, a very common word in Israel every few minutes is somebody will say, "Is the bus coming now?" They'll say Emet, Emet. Yes.
Yeah.
So the word Ma means mother, and the word Emet means true, true. So when you say Mehmet, it means the mother of truth. When you say the word emet, this is in Hebrew. Now Hebrew is a dead language, and there is no evidence that nobody ever spoke it until the late 19th century, after the 1880s. Yes, so the word emet in Arabic is Ahmed. So when you put Ma means mother, Mahamed, what do you get? It means mother of sweetness, or the great sweetness. Maha means great in Sanskrit as well. So it just means the great truth. Now the strange thing is the Old Testament ends at Maccabees. Maccabees. In Hebrew, Maccabi, yes, or Machaba, means father and mother. Machaba, yes. Now the strange thing is his story is very similar to the story of the Prophet Muhammad. So and that's where the Old Testament mysteriously ends. And you can check the duplication of this history. The Maccabee, in the history of Maccabee, is very rarely mentioned amongst Jewish communities or even in Israel in their educational curriculum. So it's like, but let me finish this thing about Esu. So the thing is, we know that this person did exist. Now, the question of him being the Son of God, the oldest documents that we've got of the New Testament are probably from the 15th century. And in the oldest documents, it says there were two men called Jesus at the time of the crucifixion. And it says one of them is called Jesus Barabbas in the Latin and Greek documents. And the other man was called Jesus Masih, the son of Jesus the Messiah. And it says that when the trial happened, when the Pharisees and the kings wanted him dead, yes, wanted him dead. When the trial happened, these two men were inside the building or the court of somebody called Pontius Pilate. And whoever Judah was, yes, did not see the selection of these two people. And then Pilate and his wife, they didn't want Jesus the Messiah crucified. They wanted Jesus Barabbas dead. Now, Jesus Barabbas means Jesus, son of the Father.
Interesting.
Can you believe
Barabbas.
this? On the day of the crucifixion, there's two men with the same name, and they look identical as well. It mentions these in the oldest written copies of the Gospels. Nobody mentions it. Nobody bothers to go through them either.
Also, the irony of Yeshua meaning salvation. Like maybe by saying Yeshua, maybe they meant not to release, like give him salvation or something.
Yeah, it developed many different meanings. When it's like if you're going to go from state to state, the name Biden or Donald Trump, it has different meanings to different people. Some people will say this guy's the devil. He brought out vaccines.
Right.
This
yeah,
guy
I mean, Ra,
is the savior.
Ra is the
Donald
sun
Trump
god,
is called
and
the
Ra
savior by many people.
True. Ra means evil in Hebrew, and it's the sun god in Egypt. So it's all about which side of the line you're on.
But the thing is, what we have to remember is when people mention Hebrew, they keep talking about it. We can't find
modern
the existence of a Hebrew language that was spoken until the 1880s, late 19th century.
Well,
Yes,
in that
you got a
sense, also
problem.
it's interesting that they associate Edom, like red, in with Esau, because red, and there's also the land of Edom, like the Edomites, so it's like southwest. It's basically Palestine, right? Like on the
Well, when
Mediterranean
you're
Sea.
going to say that, now this is going to really shock you. Yeah. First, you mentioned Isaac and Esau, so now I'll answer that. Sorry, it took me time to finish the other. The invention of the story of Isaac and Esau is to show the war between Jacob and Esau, and then Jacob is supposed to be the ancestor of the Jews, and Esau is supposed to be the ancestor of the Christians, Esau. So this was a myth that was added on to the Old Testament, and the Old Testament, we can't find copies of it older than the 15th century. They're going to say there's carbon dating to date it probably 14th century, but we can't find any written copies older than that. Now, when we go back, so Jacob is supposed to be the Jews. Now, there's all these myths that are going all around the world saying Jewish banking, Jewish bank controllers. And then there's stories of Jewish rituals. The Jews are doing this, the Jews are doing that. Yeah, now this tradition started in the Middle Ages in Europe and Asia. So if this tradition was there, it means that something happened during the Middle Ages and 16th century, 17th century, that everybody was saying Jewish bankers, Jewish moneylenders.
Like
Okay, let's
the end of
look
the
at the
period of
American.
Maimonides and the beginning of the Jesuit banking period.
Yes. Okay. Now it's not very hard to see what's going on. The global money is, everybody knows, 60 to 80% of the world's money is controlled by the dollar. Central banks have reserves in the dollar. You can check central banks around the world. Now, a simple investigation of the dollar, there's a pyramid and an eye. Yeah. Then when you go to the Moscow Kremlin, you'll find the same pyramid and the eye. Then when you look at the Vatican churches, for example, the four major churches, one of the four major is Papal Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome. Yeah, you'll find the pyramid and the eye. The pyramid and the eye is all over the Catholic Church. Yes, and even Orthodox churches. So they are the people who control the dollar. Now, many people don't know what is the Inquisition. So I mentioned this before. Now, the Inquisitions were controlled by a group of people called the Catholic Church. Now, what many people don't know is, I'll say this accurately because I don't want to make a mistake, is the Inquisitions, the insignia of the Inquisitions, you can check it online, is called Exurge Domine Judica Causam Tuam in Latin. Now, I'll translate that in simple English. It means, they say it's from the Psalms or the Psalms in the Old Testament, but the Psalms are a forgery also. And that actually says, arise, God or Master, and judge your own cause. The word exurge means get up. The word domine means Lord. But the word domine in Latin actually means master, or the people who dominate. And then it says, arise, judica, judge your own cause. This was the Inquisition. The Judica was a group of priests, bishops, who were killing people, burning them, saying, hey, you don't want to bow down and say that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, burn him. Yeah. Or when they burned people, they pierced their body so that the blood came out, they collected the blood.
Well, apparently it was
did they
not
do
even
with the
just
blood?
the Muslims or Jews, but even the Gnostics, right? So if you said you believe, they have
Yeah,
this
so when
thing
you
like the
said the
Word of God,
Gnostics,
like the Bible is the Word of God, but
yeah.
it's not just that. They're
So
saying
now the thing is, what
Christopher's
they did on
letters.
purpose was they created the words Gnostics, heretics, because they know you're going to read it, and within a few minutes you're going to forget.
Well, the
Okay,
weird
now
thing
I
is, imagine
told
they're telling you have to believe that Paul's letters to the city of Corinth or Thessalonia, that those letters
yeah.
are the Word of God. I
Okay,
mean, or
what
they'll
I'm going
burn
to
you.
tell you is very shocking now, because I've just told you drinking blood. Yes, they were collecting the blood in these inquisitions, and they were eating the meat. So now let me go through all these so-called Gnostics. The biggest ones are the Cathars in France, the Waldensians in Germany, and in Switzerland and Austria, and the Knights Templar in England, Holland, and northern France,
They claim
and the Bogomils in the Balkans.
they led
They were the
crusades
biggest
against the
Gnostics.
Bogomils and the Cathars. Crusades like they did against the Muslims. So
Yeah. They were killing them. It's like invasions of Iraq, but not just invasions. They went door to door. They
right.
collected the books and they burnt the books. But let's have a look at who these people are.
And
Yes, you
cannibalize
can
them?
check
I
it.
mean, wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it very fast so that let's see if anybody dares to say something else. Then bring your proof. Yeah, I've got in the Vatican condemned these people. The Vatican wrote about their history. Now, what you can see is that the Waldensians, they call them Gnostics, heretics, Gnostics. Yeah, they were just Germans. These are Germans, the ordinary people. What did they believe? They believed that Jesus Christ was a prophet. They believed that the Bible was a lie. They believed in the old law of the old world, not the new law of the New Testament or the new world or the new world order. Yes.
Yeah, and they were
The
very
new world order
suspicious of
means
Paul.
to replace the Old Testament. And what they believed that Jesus Christ was not the Son of God, they refused, and they refused the crucifixion. Now you can check the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar spat on crosses, but they had a simple red cross. They spat on crosses of the Catholic Church. They refused to accept the Bible. They refused to believe in the crucifixion. They refused to accept that Christ was the Son of God. Who were the Bogomils? Now the Bogomils, yeah, refused to accept anybody who will make laws or anything on earth. They were so popular that their movement almost took over the whole of Europe. The Cathars developed from them. What did they believe in? They refused to pay taxes to the Catholic Church, and they refused to work in serfdom or the fields or to fight for the church and the so-called kings that the bishops were anointing. According to them, Jesus Christ was not the Son of God. Jesus Christ was just a prophet.
So when you say just a
Doesn't this sound
prophet
like
and then not
Islam?
crucifixion, what do they don't what do they mean they don't
They
believe he was
rejected the
crucified or
crucifixion.
didn't rise again?
They rejected the crucifixion. The
Like he never
Serbians,
was
the
even
Croats,
crucified, you're saying, in their
yeah,
beliefs.
they said he was just a man, and they said this he was just a man. He had no church. He had no representative. Now, what most people don't know is now going back to the Judaica. This is important because now the Jews are being killed all over Europe. So the Jews are being killed. They're always being expelled, but mysteriously they've got all this cash for banking. But they're being killed. They're being taxed heavily. So it's impossible. They were the bankers, and the church was called the Judaica. The church collected the taxes. They were known as the Jews. The church, the Vatican, and their priests were called the Judaica, a Jew for short. That's who they were. Like, for example, there's Professor Julie Mel from North Carolina University. She's even pointed out, she looked through many, many records from the Middle Ages, and she couldn't find a single one to prove that these so-called Jewish moneylenders existed in the Middle Ages or the Renaissance. And then we've got Professor Henry Atslan, yeah, who's Jewish himself, and he's French. And he even said, I can't find the existence of a Jewish religion until the Middle Ages, and it was invented. Who invented the Jewish religion? We've got a problem.
Well,
Even
there's an
Anatoly
interesting.
Fomenko.
I was just
Yeah.
looking at that movie with Charlton Heston, The Ten Commandments, and Yul Brynner's in it, right? And they've got a bunch of little hints to this idea that the Egyptian or Kemetic priests of Set, who Set's considered a god of the foreigners and etc., the Hyksos connection, that there was they brought an Arab tribe, a Semitic tribe, out of this area, and they Stockholm syndrome them for 40 years and got rid of the grandparents, right? Because even
Okay.
Moses couldn't go to the new land.
Okay. So far, I've been talking about history to you. But now, since we last spoke, in the last 5, 6 books that I've published, I published a book on ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, another book called Code 19. I guarantee you are going to be trying to contact me like crazy. Now, I'm going to tell you about the Hyksos. This is going to totally break your heart. How do we know how to translate ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics? They say that when Napoleon Bonaparte went to Egypt on the 19th of July, 1799, they discovered the Rosetta Stone. Now, Chichen Itza, the pyramid, Chichen Itza in Mexico, yeah, that pyramid is oriented, whoever built it to face 19 degrees east from north. Now, the Chichen Itza pyramid, yes, let me go through it now, is based on the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar has got 19 months. The 19th month is the unlucky one. The pyramid, don't forget, is 19 degrees east from north. Yes, and the thing is, the Mayan calendar has an error of 19 minutes. Now, let's go back to the Hyksos. Now, the pharaoh Tutankhamun, he died at the age of 19. The person who discovered Tutankhamun's tomb, Howard Carter, he died from the curse of Tutankhamun. He died at a famous building now. This is almost like a shrine at 19 Collingham Gardens, Kensington, London. Yes. And the thing is, the Metropolitan Museum of New York has been accused of stealing 19 items from the tomb of Tutankhamun, 19 items. The mask of Tutankhamun is 19 inches deep. Are you beginning to see what I'm saying? The mummy of Tutankhamun was originally examined and completed on the 19th of November, 1925. Are you beginning to see what I'm talking about here? The Hyksos people went to Palestine and then to ancient Egypt in the 19th century BC. Now, when they went there, they built their capital. And they built the city of Ramses, historic Ramses, slaves, which is 1.9 miles wide, which is a multiple of 19. And historians say that when the Hyksos went before they became slaves, they built their capital, Avaris city. And they say that Avaris is in the 19th district of ancient Egypt. The districts were called nomes. And then they say that Ramesses II, he was from the 19th dynasty who fought Moses. And then when he fought the king of the Hittites, they say that this is the first recorded documented battle in history. They say this is the battle against the Israelites, or the Battle of Kadesh. And they fought the king of the Hittites, and he had 19 allies. The Hittites fought with 19,000 men in this battle. Ramses II, he invaded Libya. He went 190 miles into the Mediterranean coastline. Are you beginning to see what I'm talking about? Oh, wait. Now, because I'm trying to make you, now my books are something else. The reason my books have gone around like fire now.
Oh,
Before,
wait,
they
I
were
got
just
one really quickly. The value of might or Oz or strength, is 19 in Hebrew. Oz is the Hebrew, at least in modern Hebrew.
Okay. Now, 19 is actually Alpha and Omega. Alpha is 1, Omega is 9. So if you're going to talk about strength, well, Germany had its first democratic elections on the 19th of January in 1919. At that time, Germany was reorganized after World War I. It had 19 regions or 19 territorial states.
And also 19, I'm looking at some of the gematria, and 19 is Job, the greatly injured or greatly hated. So Job, also an interesting connection to this idea of losing your kingdom on a bet with the devil.
On a bet with the devil. Okay.
Not even your bet.
Yeah, so it just goes on and on. Oh, then it says World War II, 19 million women were working in the US workforce at the time. The British had famous Spitfires. They had 19 squadrons of Spitfires. The most famous squadron was squadron number 19. Blah, blah, blah. If you go through it,
so
it
19
will
is your number for sure. You found all the 19s.
Oh, I've got it highly documented that I've pointed it out in my books. But when you go through it, it will actually shock you. I've sent you one book, but I'll send you 4 or 5 major books with this number 19. Like, for example, the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, the famous uprising, Jewish revolt during World War II was on the 19th of April. It started on there. So you can go through it. The Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, 19,000 square meters. Oh yeah, how many people? The Righteous Amongst Nations, 19,000 Holocaust helpers. Yeah, 19 million civilians died in the Soviet Union. When you go through the Soviet Union, the Eastern Front was 1,900 miles long. Operation Barbarossa invaded with 19 Panzer divisions. The Soviet Union had 19,000 aircraft at that time.
Right.
And by the end of 1944, 1.9 million Russians were working for Nazi Germany.
Yeah, it's psychologically an encompassing number, right? Because 1 through 9, and then 10, and then 19 to 20. Like the Mayan calendar is really, there's 20 because it's 0 and through 19.
But there's more than this. They've faked the history. They've modified the history of World War II. This is what it's showing. Evidence points to that they've modified it. Like, let's go to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yes, Trinity test had 19 kilotons of TNT. Hiroshima was detonated 1,900 feet above the city. Yes, 190,000 people were injured immediately. 19,000 people were estimated to have died within the next 4 months. The blood samples of 19 survivors were taken for radiation illness, examined on 30th of August to 4th of September, 1945. Nagasaki produced 19 kilotons. And then they wanted to do another nuclear bomb if the Japanese didn't surrender on Tokyo, 19th of August, 1945. But that plan was scrapped. Around the time of coronavirus, 190,000 survivors of the atomic bombs were still alive. Oh, if you went to Israel, Israel. 190,000 Holocaust survivors were still alive in Israel at the time of coronavirus. Hiroshima Peace Museum has 19,000 items. Oh, the same thing is in Chernobyl. 19 miles of exclusion zone were created for Chernobyl. 190,000 kilometers of highly radioactive material was in the reactor at the time it happened. Gorbachev made his first comments on the 19th day of the disaster. I'm being serious to you. There's something more to this. Yeah. Oh, when you go through it, you'll turn around and think, what the hell is going on? The D-Day landings, 19,000 tons of bombs were dropped in area north and west before the D-Day landings. 19,000 people died in Normandy due to the Allied bombing before the D-Day landings. 19,000 troops died during D-Day landings on 6th of June. They say, even if it's true or not, 190,000 rounds of ammunition were fired from Allied warships between D-Day landings and end of 1944 to help the D-Day landings. 19,000 vehicles were taken by sea on D-Day and D-Day plus one across the English Channel. Another 19,000 vehicles were taken by air.
Oh my God!
Are you beginning to see what I'm talking about?
So yeah, you think that the 20th century, even not even just the past, like what do you think they changed about World War II?
What they've done, 19 is mentioned in the Quran. It gives you a warning and it says, look for it, and then you will know what is the truth about everything in life and the truth in history and the truth in death. It challenges you. This is how I found the code. September the 11th, 19th hijackers. They said the 9/11 Commission report says 19 minutes past 8. There were reports of aircraft hijackings. 19 minutes past. Defensive action was taken by the U.S. authorities at 19 minutes past 9. 9/11 Commission. They on purpose had 19 days of hearings. Yeah, 19,000 people were estimated maximum inside the Twin Towers. 19,000 body fragments were found after the attacks. Who the hell counted all these body fragments?
Wow, I can't believe I never looked into the Quran's 19. This is crazy. The God's miracle of 19 in the Quran.
But it's not nothing to do with just a miracle. Many people are going beyond. And they're going out of their way with mathematics.
Yeah, there's like dozens and dozens of miracle proofs on mathematical science. What? So basically, every mathematician in ancient Sufi tradition is obsessed with the number 19. This is far more than I expected to find in the number 19.
So now Anatoly Fomenko, he started this Tartaria movement. It's basically due to him. He's a mathematician. Now, when I read his works, I examined it. I started reading it many, many years ago. Now, he started showing how they rearranged history and falsified it using mathematics. Now, mathematics, when you graduate, yes, you have a cube on your head. A cube and Allah is Kabbalah. Yes. Now, a cube works three-dimensionally. Now, the flower of life has got 19 circles. Yes, now the flower of life actually forms a cube. That's why in Mecca there is a cube. Now, when people graduated in the Middle Ages, and these people, the Knights Templar, the Cathars, or they've given them strange names, I'm going to call them the French, the English, the Germans. The local people had the same beliefs as Muslims, mysteriously. So nobody's going to call them Muslims. Nobody will. But it's clear that they were Muslims. In the Balkans, there were Bogomils. They got rid of them. Yeah, they killed them and they gave them these new
documents. Because they're like para-Islam, because of like Song of Ronan, you've got the Templars and the Ottoman kings or whatever. They're working together. But then the lower people.
Now the Templars, nobody's asking what language these Templars spoke.
Right.
You can check it online. They allegedly spoke French, but they mysteriously spoke Arabic too.
Right.
Which is strange. Nobody seems to talk. In Moscow, Anatoly Fomenko, and then there's a woman called Sylvia Ivanova. I don't agree with everything that she says, because some people say that she says some things that are racist about race mixing. Yeah, but the thing is, and she talks about Sanskrit documents, which the British have compiled, but she points out that Arabic was a language in the Balkans. Now, I'm not sure where she's from, but the thing is, but she sounds like she's from Bulgaria. Now, in Bulgaria, it is known that the education system there that they have in the Balkans is actually very anti-Turkish. Yeah. Now, for somebody like her, from her research, to point out that Arabic was the global language, yes, was a major part of the global language, and there were other dialects. And it's known that the Inquisition was burning books, and all the books in Europe were all in Arabic. So if everybody was reading in Arabic in Europe, it means they must have spoken it. Nobody seems to Nobody
Yeah, and then
seems
talk about how in the
to
Dark
consider
Ages
this.
everyone was illiterate because new language. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, that's it. So now when we get back to the cube, about 19, now Anatoly Fomenko got rid of the superstition of mathematics and said, here is charts. It's just simple maths. You don't need to be superstitious. You can have a look. They copied history. They used this mathematical timeline. They use these dates just to modify things. Kabbalah is nothing mysterious. It's just simple mathematics. So now when we go through 19, there's nothing mysterious. The Quran tells you and says, have a look through it. Start with the number 19 and then have a look through the history, and then you will have a look at history and you can find what is genuine and what is a lie, and you will be able to figure it out. Like when we're looking at 19 commission hearings of 9/11, 19 minutes past 8, 19 this, 19 that. Yeah, you can go through the full. It's like this. What do they turn around and say? 19,000 jobs were moved outside of New York City as a result of September 11th. 19,000 first responders and survivors of September 11th were awarded money by the September 11th Compensation Fund. World Trade Center Treatment Program provided over 19,000 medical. You have to go through each website one by one, .gov, info, and all this. I went through it myself. I couldn't believe it. So that's when you figure out, hey, they're just making half this information up. The FDNY, Rudy Giuliani, you know, when they had the closing ceremony in Madison Square, yeah, had 19,000 people in 2002. Yeah, who counted on? So it's like they're just giving out bogus information. Now, the Quran says that over the fire of hell, there's 19 angels. And then it says, it tells you that when you look through this number 19, you will know what is the truth in history and what is the truth about everything. And then it says, after this, you will know if the Quran is speaking the truth about history, because the Quran is telling people that the followers of Moses and the followers of Jesus Christ, that they followed exactly the same system as in the Quran. I'm not
That's very
talking about
interesting.
modern Muslims, because modern Muslims have something else. But when we look at the Waldensians, or the Waldensian so-called Gnostics of Germany, yeah, they didn't believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. They didn't believe Jesus Christ was crucified. They say the Bible was written by people who believed in the devil and things like this,
So
or whatever.
if like
Yeah.
Moses, okay, so if Moses comes from this Egyptian priest family, this Kemetic priest family, and then grabs this people and creates this, what do we know then about? Because you've shown ample evidence in your books about Egypt's modern origins. A lot of the architecture
Yeah.
is sort of like World Fair stuff, and we've seen metal bolting
Yes.
things together.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
about
So now, for example, in the Vatican Museum, they've got these Egyptian mummies there. Yeah. Now they control the press, they control historians, they control scholars. But one or two scholars spoke out a few years ago, and they said, "Hey, these Egyptian mummies, they're fake. Yeah, the dead bodies, we've tested them, and it looks like they're from the 16th century." And the full mummy wrapping and everything was done only in the 19th century.
which is A,
Yes.
kind of
So,
sad because
so
they
now
lied,
you
but B,
mentioned
it's
Moses and the
terrifying that
ancient
they're saying they're
Egyptians and the
mummifying people in
priests.
the 1600s, basically.
Yeah.
That's the next level. So after the Inquisition or during
Oh,
the Inquisition, they
yeah. Now
mummified some
you
people.
now yeah. So I'll mention about ancient Egypt. Now, in my book Ancient Egypt, I've written a book called Ancient Egypt that's out right now, and that mentions the number 19 in ancient Egypt. That goes through the fraud of ancient Egyptian history a lot more, and the book called The Matrix. The Matrix continues that, and the new book Skull and Bones. They show that there is no doubt that the civilization of ancient Egypt was during the Middle Ages. Now, if people don't want to read my books, you're welcome to read Anatoly Fomenko's books. He goes through it in so much detail, that hundreds and hundreds of pages. And then there's Velikovsky. He goes through this information too, and many other people. And they go through it, that you can check it. And my books, you've seen, I wrote them so easily. Instead of putting references on the end, every point I make, I didn't do a screenshot, because you know what they'll say, copyright infringement. I took a photograph of my computer, a photograph in my office, so that nobody can say I've broken copyright laws and for a screenshot. So that's how I did the photographs, so that I made it easy for references, that people can check everything. Now, you mentioned about the churches and what is it, that Moses being related to the priests and things like that. Now, nobody mentions this clearly. In the Quran, it says that Moses is telling his people that they already were the kings, that God already made them kings and masters. Yes, in several civilizations that nobody looks at. Moses was a descendant of Abraham. Abraham destroyed a king and a civilization, and then his people took over a civilization of Nimrod. Now they've told some crazy story that Nimrod civilization is in the middle of the deserts of Iraq. Yeah, but Anatoly Fomenko has shown that this civilization was in Europe. Yes, so the thing is, who Moses was and what he had to do with the Egyptian royal family is a lot deeper. And the Hyksos story and all these things were invented because I've just given you a few 19s from ancient Egypt. But when you go the ancient Egypt book, I'll send you a copy. You can go through it and you will think, what the hell is this? Is even the temple dimensions, many of these fake temples are done with 19 this and 19 that. Like, for example, the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem on Temple Mount, 19 meters high, 19 Great Walls of China, 19 towers of Moscow when there's 20, but they've made sure there's 19 because they've modified these things. So when you go through these things, you start to think, what the hell is going on here? It's actually a lot deeper. So in my books, I've gone through it, and when you go through it, you'll be totally surprised. So now that you mentioned Egypt and these high priests, yes. Now the thing is, in the book The Matrix, I've shown more information to show that Egypt was at the same time during the Middle Ages. Now, what many people don't know is that in many churches, for example, Holy Trinity Church, Rothwell, Northamptonshire, in the basement, there's thousands of skulls and bones. In Capela de Ossos in Portugal, in the church is decorated with skulls and bones. St. Ursula Church, Cologne, Germany, a great church or cathedral, thousands of bones. Now, I'll give you an example of what these bone stories. Now, this is going to be terrifying for many people. St. Stephen's Church in a village called Leuk in Switzerland, Leuk, is decorated with thousands of skulls and bones. That nobody knew these skulls and bones were there. It's in a village. Nobody can explain it. It was discovered after 1980. What were they doing in the basement of this church? It makes no sense. St. Bravo's Cathedral, a great, huge cathedral in Belgium. The walls underground are actually built and constructed with human skulls and bones. Yeah. So the thing is that the church is not what we think it is. People are talking about this so-called free energy. Tell them to study the skulls and the bones. Saint Hilaire Church, Marville, France. Si vous habitez en France, moi je parle français, monsieur. Si tu veux, je parle en français. C'est pas difficile pour moi. I speak French also, monsieur. I told you I studied too many languages. So when many people speak about gematria, etymology, the average person will study a few things. They've not gone out of their way to study many languages.
Right.
And the Balkans, sen çok iyi biliyor musun? Ben iyi, çok iyi.
Well, really
Çok
quickly,
şaşırdım.
it's interesting. I was just thinking, I'm wrapping my head more around 19, and I'm thinking about how the 19th century, or the 20th century is the 1900s, right? And it's very similar in the sense of the Mayan calendar. I never really considered this, but the Mayan calendar
Yeah, the
is
Mayan
that
calendar
0
is a
to
fake.
19.
The Mayan calendar is a fake.
Wow.
Now, the thing is, I will tell you why, because most people don't realize. The thing is, you said 19th century and the year 1900. Okay, in the year 1900, there was a city. I wrote a book about this. It's called Tatar City, the book. I wrote a full book about it. Yeah, many people will probably think it's not important. It's in Beijing. It's in China. Now, Beijing. Today we call it Beijing. Before it was called Peking. Now, if you look at many maps from the 19th century, it's called Tatar City. This is strange. The city is actually called Tatar City, and if you check through the history of that city. Yes, the history of that city, they've modified it a lot. And there's pictures of battles, the British and the French invaded. That city fell in the year 1900.
Right.
This is why they decided to call, that was the last Tatar stronghold globally.
Tartar
and that's
City.
why they called, yes.
Beijing, Peking, Tartar City. That makes way, yeah,
And
Peter Fleming.
now the thing is, if we want to talk about these so-called Tartaria, then we don't have to go back 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. We've got something from 100 years ago. Now, Beijing, when you look at Tiananmen waterways, canals, and there's 19 kilometers of underground tunnels, 19 again, yeah, or 19 miles. I forgot if it's miles or kilometers. Yeah, you can check it out, an underground city. Now, Tiananmen looks so amazing with the waterways. Nobody's asking who built this.
The water.
Yeah. The thing is about Tatar City, yes, when the British and the French went there, the British army went there, but the so-called British Empire that nobody talks about, these British soldiers that went there, they were all Indians. Nobody. So to understand the New World Order, everybody, India itself, when the British gave independence, it was created with 19 states, same like there's the 19 states in the Eurozone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So looking
So
at
now the
Britain
thing
that
is,
way
there
is
were all
changing. We were talking about France and the Caribbean, but yeah, India was a state, and so much of South Africa. You look at J.R.R. Tolkien, the guy who translated Beowulf. He's he's a
Tolkien.
British guy, but he's a African British guy. Yeah. So basically,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
saying though they were Anglo, or were they just British by
But
being members of the empire?
now the thing is, when you look at the first people to mention the New World Order or the new system, there's two people. The Vatican insisted on the new system or the New Testament, yes, and then they wanted a new world, yes, and they made contracts with it saying we're going to take over the world and divide it between us, and that's why there were colonial empires that started invading Europe and attacking everywhere after the 16th century. Yes. And then the thing is, the Indian army, we don't know. They say this Indian army was controlled by the British and the French. It's invaded Beijing, and American soldiers came, Russian soldiers came, Japanese soldiers came, and Chinese soldiers who were working for the British, French, Germans. The whole world invaded Beijing in the year 1900. And the thing is, what most people don't realize is that half the people in England and other places, they didn't bother to follow this calendar that is taught in school today, because many people didn't go to school in 1900 and they still lived in villages. So the thing is, after that date, we have the official calendar 1900. They chose the number 19. That's why they called it the 19th century. Now,
Interesting.
until you read my books, you won't believe this. Yeah. Or every single year, from the year 1900 to 1999, they chose it on purpose because they wanted to use the number 19. And now that they know that they cannot use the number 19 anymore after the year 2000 came, so now they found an excuse to use the number 19 everywhere.
In
So they've made
2019,
sure.
brutal 2019, of course, reset.
No, COVID,
Yeah,
Corona.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yes. So now everywhere you go, you must see the number 19. So who is they? So now I will tell you more. Then they called it this disease called corona. And the word corona actually means crown or Quran. Yes. And then they said for a protection, you wear a mask. They planned this more than 100 years ago, more than 200 years ago. Mask
Yeah, I've been noticing the
protection
mask
means
thing is
mosque.
really, I don't know why more people
Mosque
aren't launching on that. Because
protection
France,
mosque.
remember France was like a year,
Wait. What
2018,
you
they
don't
were
seem to
arresting people
understand
for
is,
going to the beach wearing masks. And then after that, they made everyone put them on. It's like vapor Sharia.
wait. It's because you don't know what this war is about. The disease is called the corona psychologically, the Quran. And wear the mask. And people said no masks, no mosques, no
Oh, interesting.
corona. There's more to it. It's because when you look at the
So wait,
Bible in
Do
the
you
Old
think the
Testament,
mask is a good thing then, or what? I mean, in terms of the religious aspect, ought we be
right?
What's up with the mask?
I will tell you now. If there is chemical weapons in the air, then a mask is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean,
If
there's
there
a
is nothing
fire. I had a
there, then
mask.
a
It was
mask
the
is
first
not
time I needed it. I
necessary.
was excited, but
Yeah.
is there but a religious reason? Should you wear it? What's the religious aspects? I saw some books from Jesuits in the 1500s where they went to Tartary, and they show people wearing the masks. Like they have even women in the hijabs. So apparently it's
Yeah.
a thing that existed.
Yeah. Now, now when you look at the Jesuits went to Eastern Europe, Tartary they claim started after Poland. Now the thing is, what Anatoly Fomenko did was this. He checked the majority of the coins in Europe, and the majority of the coins in Europe, for example, Sweden, Finland, Norway, the majority of the coins, one, are Arabic. They're written in Arabic and not normal Arabic.
I mean, we're using
They're
Arabic
written in an
numbers,
Arabic
so.
language. Yeah, no, the words itself are written in
Oh, even just beyond
Arabic
not using
language
Roman
decoration.
numeral, they're using Arabic script too. Interesting.
Yeah, yes, the full writing. And they even say there is no God but Allah. We're talking about the majority of the coins found in Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, yeah, Germany, Poland, Ukraine. Yeah, the so-called Ashkenazi Jews or Khazars, whatever, in their territory, all the coins are in Arabic. And they all say there is no God but Allah. Nobody is talking about this. So
Wow.
if we're going to talk about Tartary, yes, the history that the Jesuits wrote has been falsified because they're not mentioning this.
It's also interesting because like
And
that makes Islam monotheistic, whereas Christianity and Judaism are henotheistic. They believe in there
right,
are other
right,
gods, have no other god
Judaism
before me.
is actually monotheistic. Now, Judaism is actually monotheistic.
Well, but it says
Simple,
it believes
basic
in other
Judaism.
gods you shouldn't have before you, which is to say you don't believe there aren't other gods because otherwise why would you command not to worship them?
Okay, now the wording and the way the Old Testament is done, many people, even in the Jewish religion today, they've not read the Old Testament. Now, as I've told you, Professor Henry Atlan, he found from his research, which is available, you can check it online, that Judaism was invented during and after the Middle Ages. Anatoly Fomenko showed that the Old Testament is actually the events of Europe and Asia. So if the Old Testament is the events in the history of Europe and Asia, yes, and of the Middle Ages, then this means the Old Testament must have been written and completed after the New Testament and after the Middle Ages and the Renaissance finished. This means Judaism as a religion could not have existed before the 15th, 16th century. Yes, we have a problem.
So everything's
Yes,
changed, and it does sound like because you look at these cities and these ancient cities or these world fair cities, they have this very cult, I guess you could say. There's a new religion that's being developed around it, and it seems you look at these
yeah, the
Nordic
new
religions, they're
religion
based
is
on
going a bit
Hellenism.
too far. For example, there is many people who are now exaggerating, saying that yes, there are buildings that are buried. Several floods happened for different reasons, for industrial reasons, for land modification reasons in the last 400-500 years. There have been floods in some civilizations, but many people are there was floods and other things. Many of them were due to industrial reasons and for mining.
Right. You
Yes.
look at
So I've
California,
written a
for
book.
instance, it's like the Aral Sea. It's been completely
Yeah,
feedback looped from the
yeah,
lagoon area into
yeah. And the hydraulic mining in California,
turned to
yes, it
lagoons to
is a very
deserts,
good
right?
example. And but the thing is, many people are going too far. Like for example, the average person, like I mentioned that the skulls and bones in churches, yeah, people have not studied churches, and many people are just saying these buildings are energy buildings. Well, many churches have skulls and bones, broken ones hidden in their basements. So what type of energy are we talking about? Ghent Cathedral has got walls made of bones,
Right.
human bones.
So what is okay? So you're writing
So
a book right now with the Skull and Bones. What have you found? What do you think that it really comes down to, and what is the lore?
what does it come down to? Now, the Quran says a different story about technology. Now, the thing is, according to the history that the Jesuits have written, and they modified these Arabic documents and everything that were in Europe, yeah, there's the subject of alphabet, alchemy, yes, algebra. Yes, now alchemy is to do with, they say it's a secret science and it's to do with separating metals. In other words, you know, what we're using to create iron oxide, to create steel, etc. And they say it was a secret. The Quran says it was no secret. Now, according to official history, they say that alchemy was discovered by the Arabs and they wrote about it. That's why it's called al-Shemi and chemistry, and the Arabs were the masters of that. But the Quran says a different story. The Quran says God gave this information and this technology, that God sent angels, whoever they were, whatever an angel is, some of them come in human form, the Quran says. And it says that God gave alchemy. And we find statues of King David in Renaissance Italy, all with Arabic writing. But the Arabic writing is not normal. It's Kufic Arabic. And the strange thing is, on purpose, historians call it Kufic. And they say it came from a city called Kufa in Iraq. And this city, we can't find it to exist before the year 1900. It's an empty field with a building, that just one building there. So, and the word Kufic actually in modern English is cubic, cube or square, Kabbalah. Yes. So the thing is, it was a digital writing. Now, what is even stranger is this. The oldest Arabic documents and manuscripts that we can find, many of them are written in Kufic, and the original Quran was written in Kufic. Now, Kufic actually is exactly the same like a QR code. You've seen a QR code, haven't you?
Right,
Yes.
right.
Now, a QR code, they tell you it means Q something. I've forgotten what it stands for. QR, I've forgotten. But nobody wants to say it means, they pretend and say QR means, let's see. QR means, let me quickly check, quick response. But anybody who knows old world secret history will know that QR comes from the word kara. In Hebrew, kara means read. And a QR code is something that you read. The word Quran is plural for the word Qura.
Some have
and it just
associated
means
Q
read.
with chi as well, like Chiro, Kira.
Yes, it just means read. Chiro,
It's
kira.
interesting looking at
Akura
Kufic because
bismika.
the
Now,
Kufic
in
Arabic
Arabic,
does
in
have these
Arabic,
cubes. It looks very, these lines and things. It does look like a QR code.
okay. Now the strange thing is, this is going to really, really, really shock you. Yeah, that this is totally going to shock you. That when I first started studying this, I was around age 15. That I thought, what the hell is going on? Yeah, when I was around age 15, 16, I thought, I found a copy of the Bible in high school, in no, the Quran in the library, and then I thought, oh, I'll have a look through the basic history, what language it was written in. I found that the Quran was not written in modern Arabic. That the Quran was originally written in a language called Kufic in English.
And
Yeah, they
so
call it Kufic.
were you saying Kufic is not from Kufa, the Iraqi city?
You can. I'll send you photographs of that city right now in the year 1900. You're going to think, what the hell? I can't find this city. It does not exist.
Wow.
It's on my Facebook profile, but I'm trying to look for it very quickly. Now, when you see this, it is totally going to make you afraid. It made me totally worry and totally afraid. Now, here is, you've seen what a QR code is like. Now, here, I've just sent you a picture of how the Arabic Quran was written before the 15th century. The Vatican burnt all these books in Italy and in Spain. Just quickly have a look at your messages. Have you found it?
Well, let me jump in there real quick.
When you look at that, it is going to totally baffle you. That's from the 15th century, what I've just sent you.
Okay, yeah, I'm pulling it up. And yeah, it's the square Kufic. And yeah, I was looking, so if you go to Wikipedia and you look up Arabic, the first thing that comes up is some kind of Euro Spanish looking stuff, but you go to the square Kufic area, it all looks like QR codes.
They invented the word Kufic.
Say what?
Yeah, they invented the word Kufic. It actually means cubic in English. It's a cubic language. And there's the city of Kufa in the year 1900. Nobody is there. Nothing is there. Just one building.
Yeah, and it's a brutal, pretty building. It's got, it looks like an Agrabah in Disneyland, but then there's just this
But we're talking about nobody lives there. They're telling us there was thousands of people who invented the Kufic language, which is a lie.
So it's completely,
Kufa City today.
You don't think it was just like wiped out? It's Iraq. Iraq was pretty well.
No. The thing is, what you can look at, because Iraq is not an urbanized nation like Western nations, you've still got many tribes who are in the villages, and they will tell you there was nobody there. Their grandparents can remember. They can remember there was nobody there. They'll say the history is a lie. It's a lie. They'll say, you can see the difference. There is a city there today. There was nothing there before. Now let me show you the cube that you wear on your head.
Hold on, wait, really quickly. I was reading Wikipedia, and then it says the Abbasid era, 749, the Abbasids attacked Kufa, or they made it their capital, and then they moved their seat to Baghdad, and then they were sacked by the Karmatians.
Yes,
in 905.
They've made all these words so difficult and everything. Now I've just sent you 2 more pictures.
But do you think that it's plausible that like there was a large city that just never recovered after it's been centuries since it recovered?
Well, if you're going to say that, then it's the same story that they're saying, that the Mongols had a capital called Sarai-Burg or Bagsarai. Yes, in Tatar language. Turkish is similar to Tatar language, and Tatar language, Turkish is half Arabic. Yeah, Bagsarai, they can't find it to exist, and they're saying the Mongols had this great empire that ruled half of Europe, half of Asia, half the world. Now, what I've shown you here is in cathedrals in Spain, what Kufic looks like. And then I've shown you 3-dimensional Kufic. Languages have gematria. So when you do the gematria, it makes languages 3-dimensional into a cube. Yes. And as you've noticed, the swastika.
Yeah, actually, when I sent that to you, I didn't even see it at first. But I was just looking at this is on Wikipedia
it's Muhammad.
as an example.
It's Muhammad.
He's the propeller.
Wait, you just sent the last symbol that you sent.
It's Muhammad.
Is the swastika.
It says Muhammad.
Yeah, it actually means. Yeah. Now the thing is, what they're telling us is Europe. Yeah. Found the swastika far away. They went all the way to Tibet, and that's where they found the swastika.
And they never noticed it along the walk, right?
And they're trying to tell us the swastika was not in Europe in the Middle Ages. The swastika
It's
is
everywhere.
the symbol for the name Muhammad.
Man,
in
actually,
Cubic-
that's
Cubic
really
language.
brutally interesting because when I went to Spain last, I saw the graves, the tombs of the Queen and King Ferdinand and Isabel, and laced around her coffin is just tons of
Swastikas.
these little pictures of Muhammad's name.
Yes.
in
And do you
Kufic.
know what nobody looks at? I've just sent you a new picture from Spain, the Cordoba Mosque. The swastika
Yeah.
is all over. I sent you a new one. And the swastika, it is known that
Right.
many people from Spain ran to Morocco. It is known. Go to Morocco. The swastika stands for Muhammad. Go to
Right.
Algeria. Yes, and they're telling us the swastika didn't reach Europe until recently from modern Sanskrit, and nobody had heard of Sanskrit. The swastika, it was in Europe, and the common people, the villagers, they loved this symbol. It stood for Maha Emit, the great truth, Muhammad. And that's why they made sure that symbol became evil. They created Hitler and his gang. They controlled everything. They destroyed that symbol. Yes.
Right. I'm
So
looking for
the-
something to send you really quickly. Actually, I'm going to put in your list.
And
which
they,
is,
and not only that, the swastika language in Kufic was on the gowns of the Holy Roman Emperors until the Habsburgs took over the Holy Roman Empire. Yes.
I'm looking for. There's
So they
the
used
Chiro
Kufic,
Gama-
yes,
Here
in
we
Germany.
go.
It was the language, and all the swords of these German soldiers, the Venetian soldiers, that you can see were actually in Arabic. What have you sent, Nature?
I'm just sending you a science article. So I've got. When I was in school, they were calling it the Gamadian instead, and essentially they're using it as a photon turbine because it's the perfect propeller shape. And they were doing tons of studies on how you can make these little photoactive turbines that are in the shape of Muhammad's name. So it was making rounds, but you couldn't call it what it was, right? So they had to call it the Greek name, which is the Gamadian. But
Yeah.
it's amazing because it's
Now
one of those
that-
things
now
they had
that-
to get over because
Yeah.
it's scientifically useful.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned all these Gnostics, they've given these strange names on purpose. It's just normal German people that they were killing, and all their bones, you can find them under St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. You can find them throughout Bohemia, throughout Germany, in these strange churches. It's in my new book, Skulls and Bones, and more details are in all the other books as well. Yeah. What you will find is that, hey, the Holy Roman Emperors, they used Kufic, cubic writing on their clothes. And the swastika in cubic means Muhammad. And in Germany, the whole Holy Roman Germanic Emperors, Charlemagne and the rest of them, yes, they used Kufic. And if anybody is trying to say that in Germany, this swastika had some strange meaning, Gnostic meaning, the Gnostics, hey, they believed that Jesus Christ was not the Son of God and he was the messenger of God.
Whoa.
Fomenko points this out. I'm pointing it out. It does not mean that I'm trying to support modern Islam. Modern Islam is full of fake concepts,
Right.
fake
It's like
ideas.
Westboro Baptist
I'm
Church.
talking
Everything
about
today
Quranic
is
Islam based
Yeah.
on the Quran,
Scholastic
the
original.
original text. Yes.
Yeah.
Huh?
So you talked about the Qumran document before and the
The
original.
Qumran documents, they're forgeries.
Yeah.
These
so-
are just forgeries. It's like political forgeries that were made recently. But anyway, go back to that cubic because this is scary. What I've sent you, these documents from the Middle Ages, like here, have a look at these walls of
Mm.
these so-called cathedrals today that were originally mosques that they took over in France and Italy. Just have a look at this building. They destroyed many of these cathedrals and modified them. But here's a place that they still haven't modified. I sent you a picture. Have a look at that. And it will make you wonder, was
The
the world
future is
advanced
Kufic.
500-600 years ago?
Well, the Matrix, they had the Animatrix series, and they talk about Iraq as being the center of there's like a place south of Baghdad that's going to be the new city of the AI called 01. And it's interesting just looking at this.
Yeah, AI
Kufa.
is 1919.
Yeah.
A is number 1 and I is number 9. Yeah, and if you have a cube, when you do the masonry of languages, it's normally on a grid with 9 squares. Yes, 9 squares, 1 to 9. And you could put alphabets in and you can compare languages and the masonry of languages, and you will find a lot of modern languages are fake. But anyway, going back to this cubic, this language that the Quran originally came in is amazing. It's a digital language. Now, as you'll notice in that picture that I've sent you, the central decoration is the original language of the Quran. It's cubic. Around it is the handwriting, modern Arabic,
The
and that was
carnation
just
style,
decoration.
right?
Was decoration. So now the strange thing is what is the Quran? Let me send you
What is the what is
what
the
the
outer ring? Okay, so really quickly, because I'm looking at this, I've seen the Kufik in the center, the door's Kufik, and above it's Kufik, and the outline is there's a ring, there's a frame of the Carmatian script, which is the kind of whimsical stuff, and then what's the
yeah.
stuff on the outer line? That looks like almost
Now the
Sanskrit.
outer line is, I'll give you an example. Like today, we've started using QR codes.
Yeah,
Many people can read them. You can study the language itself.
right.
It's based on gematria. Now, the thing is, most people are now, when I write a book, I'll type it out. But 20 years ago in university, we used to type it and write it with our own hands. So now, writing, many young children don't even learn how to write in many countries. They just start learning how to type. Their parents buy them a keypad.
Right.
Yes. So now many people can't write. So what happened is when you look at that and you look at all the old Arabic books, look at these.
Oh
This is the
yeah.
Quran.
Types.
The
Types.
Quran is a digital language. We don't know who this Muhammad or Muhammad or the Prophet Muhammad, we don't know who he was. We don't know what this book is. The Quran was originally in this digital language called Cubic. And then when the Inquisition started to burn these books in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, the Muslims mysteriously ran into the deserts. They ran out of urban areas and civilized Europe and other places, and they ran to the deserts and the mountain regions in the Balkans, wherever they survived. Yes, and then the wars continued all the way up to the 1940s, 50s. And that's why they're continuing the wars in the desert regions now. And these people memorize this book, and today they write it in their handwriting. Modern Arabic is just a handwriting. It's like out of desperation. But the Quran came in that format, cubic. Have a look at it. This is Kufic. What the hell is this? The Quran is. When we start to look at this book with its gematria in a three-dimensional format in cubic, and it's a QR code language. It's insane. I don't know what to say. What it is.
So
This book is an advanced book.
So
It's
what
like
do you think
I'm
happened
sending
then?
you
Like
things.
we have all these stories about. By the way, it's interesting because it's socially acceptable to believe that everything is really, really ancient. You can believe the pyramids are 20,000 years old if you want to, but when you start saying that things are new, it offends everybody, and it sounds like this is why. What do you think the religion? Like, because it seems like this comes down to there's two kinds of beliefs here. There's this humanism thing that was going on. And then there's this digital takeover. Is that right, or what do you think the dynamic
Right.
is?
Now, many things, most people who've had a look into so-called world history call it the kingdom of God, call it Tartaria, call it Mongolia, call it caliphate, call it Russia, call it whatever you want. There was a global civilization and it was advanced. And the thing is, if they were advanced, they had an advanced writing system. I've just sent you that advanced writing system. It's cubic and it's in Arabic. That was the advanced writing system. Now, the thing is, somebody destroyed the old world order, which is called the Old Testament or the Old Law. And then they wanted the New Testament and the New Law, which means you don't have to follow the old law anymore. And you can make your own laws. And the people in power make these laws. Yes. And what they did was they destroyed everything and they hid the technology. We're not discovering anything. They're bringing things out. It's like I sent you photographs before that I've met people in big technology companies in Japan, in America, in other places. I've been to many factories where they produce technology, and the thing is, and many offices. And the thing is, we're not rediscovering or anything. The thing is, they're slowly bringing the technology out, and company workers are just adapting to technology, and they're just making sure that technology we can use it. That's all we're doing. The people in power hid the technology. And that's why we're seeing that many places were destroyed. These fake wars happened, everything to wipe out the history. That's what we've seen. Paris mysteriously looks like a ghost city, deserted, destroyed. 6 million people are underground. And they're saying everybody forgot about these graves until the 19th century, that 6 million people are buried under the city. Rome is a smaller city than Paris. So under Rome, they're saying there's 500,000 people buried there. Or people forgot these places. It's just a lie. They took over Europe. They killed many of these people. They gave them names like heretics, gnostics, other names, inquisitions, whatever. and they took over saying 30 years war, this war, that war, Protestant wars. They give them strange names like Protestants, this, that, half this history. We can't even verify it. It sounds like a joke. Yes, but within the fake history that they've written, they made mistakes. Like, for example, they showed the invasion of Vienna when they say the Turks made their first invasion in the 16th century and the second one in 1683 in the 17th century. And the first invasion, yeah, Anatoly Fomenko pointed out that the Jesuits and the Catholic Church wrote this history, but mysteriously they've got the Ottoman army marching with flags with crosses. So that means they wrote it, but in their diagram that they did, because they did these pictures in these manuscripts, they forgot to change that into stars and moons. But the Ottoman army came with stars and crosses like the Knights Templar. So the symbol of the crosses was something else. Yes. So, and then they're showing there's medieval manuscripts, which are alleged medieval, but it looks more like they're the Renaissance. They've got the Christians with Arabic writing in the background with their moons and stars. So the history doesn't make sense. Then the invasion of 1683, yeah, there's a so-called plague in Europe in the 1680s, yeah, and the thing is, the Holy Roman Emperors and the Pope himself and others were known to drink blood, human blood, yeah, they're known to drink it, and they called it medicine, you know, like people who are saying, I drink Red Bull for health, yeah, so these people were drinking blood for health regularly. And they're telling us that all these people were mysteriously dying. And then the people who protested against the church, they've made a fake history of Protestantism. Many people ran to Istanbul, a big city, and they were saying, we're begging you, come and help. So then the Turks and the Russians, they come. Fomenko pointed out the Russian army also came, and other people, because in Moscow at the time, we look at these Russian kings who've got Arabic verses of the Quran on their helmets.
Right.
Which doesn't make sense. And then the Russian army, yeah, has got Arabic writing on their swords that invades Europe. And they're telling us that they are so-called Son of God believers and things like this. And then under St. Stephen's Dome Cathedral and other churches, there's thousands of bones in Vienna. What the hell were they doing inside these churches?
How Russian were they? Weren't just Chechens. They were like from St. Petersburg.
Nobody's talking about the Chechens. I've been to the Caucasus region, Kafkas, Caucasus, or whatever they want to call it. Most people have never been there, and they talk about that region. Now, for example, if you come to America, you'll notice that there's people from the Balkans and the Middle East who look a little darker compared to the Scandinavians and the Germanic people. Now, in the Caucasus region, what is so strange? Yeah, for example, I've been to Novi Bazar, and you're from that region. Then you will know I'm not lying. I'll describe the Caucasus. Now, when I went to the Caucasus, I thought, what the hell is going on? These Chechens don't mix with the other locals. They're tall, they're bigger, and they've got blonder hair and redder hair. So I know that they migrated south. That's why they migrated south, and they're fighting to defend the Quran. And they say, we came south, we came from Germany and Scandinavia. We retreated after the 18th century. Yes. And they are mysteriously Muslim, and they're Northern Europeans. And now if you go to Novi Bazar is different from Niš. Niš, yes, in Serbia. Now, when I went to Niš, I noticed the people were not as tall as the people in Novi Bazar. And I noticed that the Novi Bazar people were taller, and there was more people who had the ratio and tendency to have blonder hair or fair hair. So, and those people, they say, we went to the mountains, we retreated from Germany. And they say they only came in the last 200 years. Yes. Same like the Bulgarians. Many Bulgarians are taller, and everybody is giving this fake history that the Russians invaded the Balkans, fighting the Ottoman Empire. But many of these Bulgarians who retreated into Bulgaria, the Russians came after them. They came after them, the Russian Romanovs, yeah, and the Holy Roman Empire, Holy Roman Habsburgs, they seized the actual Tartaria or Moscow. And when they seized it, they put the fake Romanovs in power. And then what happened with the fake Romanovs from St. Petersburg, they made a law in the 18th century. Every book in Northern Europe must be surrendered. And they sent out their similar inquisitions, and they got hold of all these Arabic books, and they changed all the coins. Or the Russian currency was a dirham. It was in Arabic also, which doesn't make sense. But it doesn't make sense with the official history. So there you have it. It's like why the Scandinavian type of people in the Caucasus and in the Balkans. Whereas when you go to Azerbaijan next door, you will see, hey, they've got Middle Eastern features. Armenians have got more Middle Eastern features, but Chechnya, no. Dagestan is mixed between Northern European, mixed with the Southern European. They've mixed together more. And the Chechnyans, they're more in the mountains, so they didn't mix together. And that's why they can fight in Northern Europe. And that's why, because they've got the biology of Northern Europeans who tend to be bigger compared to Southern Europeans, which many people know. It was more difficult for the Southern divisions of the Russian army to fight these people, because the Southern divisions had local recruits who were much shorter, and everybody feared these Chechens. Yeah, because they knew they were taller, they were bigger. It's not because they were more crazy or anything, they were bigger. Yeah, so obviously if you're shorter in height, you're going to fear somebody who's bigger. But it is a serious question. What are these Scandinavian and Germanic type of people doing over there? When did they go there? Now they're going to give you some fake history that doesn't make sense. In the same way that we've got people who are Scandinavian type of people, or people from Poland, Polish blood, as far as Kashmir, Pakistan, and Western China. That nobody seems to explain Polish blood and German blood being in Afghanistan.
What about, so in terms of the goddess, in terms of like chauvinism in the goddess, because you look at Chechnya and you look at a lot of people's ideas of every religion really is as a paternal religion, but so many of these areas we look at least what we're told about their history is that they worshipped a lot or Inuit or these gods. For instance, Hathor, which H and K, like Cathar, is like the Hathor is the god, sky deity, and the mother sky, the consort of Horus, right? So many of these feminine archetypes. Is it? And also, I know, like in Arabic, they've used Sufi, Sophia. Is there a feminine aspect to
now
God?
The thing is, I mentioned Hathor in my book called The Matrix. Yeah. Now the thing is, ancient Egypt is not ancient. It's from the Middle Ages, 14th, 15th, 16th century. Now, the thing is, if you look at many of these Egyptian words and you compare them to Latin and the Egyptian rites of religion, mummification, Catholic mummification, then you will soon see it's the same civilization. Yes, Anatoly Fomenko pointed that out. I pointed that out in my book called The Matrix. Yeah.
So the Catholics, do they kill off a bunch of people and then force that style of? I mean, is that
right? The thing is, in the book Skulls and Bones. Now, the thing is, in the book Skulls and Bones, what I've done, I've given an example of 20 churches so that people can go and do the research themselves. Of 20 churches with underground dungeons, basements, thousands of skulls and bones. Now, when you see it, you're going to think, oh my God, this is a joke. They're in the basements of churches and people upstairs are praying. Skulls and bones. Now, the thing is, when you're saying, do I think that they wiped out a civilization? Let me just send you a few examples. Normally, the thing is, it's because I don't keep this stuff. But
also in terms of the femininity, I'm curious, like, because is it that they worshipped a feminine aspect, or that they're trying to push a goddess cult now?
Okay, now the thing is, now when people say something to do with worship, now, why do people drink a drink like Red Bull? Why do they mix it with, let's say, vodka with Red Bull or things like that? Why would somebody do that?
Because it's there, or because they want energy?
Because the Red Bull gives the energy once you've drank the red vodka so that you could dance away. Yeah. That's what most of my mates do. when they go clubbing. Yeah, they say, hey, it's just the extra boost.
Yeah.
So now the thing is, what happened is, I will give you an example. Imagine if you're killing people and you're burning people and you're cooking them. yeah, to eat their meat, and you're killing kids, saying that kids have got blood, and then that blood, because when a kid cuts his hand or something, or he falls and hurts his knees, his skin recovers faster compared to somebody who's 60 or 70, because the blood is different, it's younger. So now imagine if you and your mates and your friends are going out there and you're drinking blood every day and you're killing people. Now, the thing is, imagine you're growing weaker because now you've got the people who mysteriously, there's a guy called Muhammad, or the Prophet Muhammad, who came, yeah, and his boys are coming saying, motherfuckers, we're going to chop you up. Or I don't want to swear, saying, hey, we're going to get them. And they're invading Vienna. And now they're mysteriously, there millions of people are following them all over Europe. And what are you going to do? You're going to hide their history. You're going to call them Gnostics, devil worshippers, this, that, dual gods, that they had two gods. And then you're going to change history and you're going to say, they did these rituals. They had these female goddesses, everything. You're going to hide everything. This is what they did in history. Now, this is what my new book, Skulls and Bones, shows. Because I didn't save the pictures on my computer, unfortunately, I'll have to send you bad quality pictures. But unfortunately, it's bad, but because these are actual photographs for the book. And it's because I don't want to infringe copyright. You know what these people are like, because they don't want the message to get out there. Let me send you a few of these. Now, I'm sending you a few churches showing you what's in their basements. Now, when you see this, you're going to think, what the hell? In their basements, or some of them, they use it as decorations, but in most churches, it's in their basements.
Right. I've been to a number of churches in Europe that have skull art and skeletons
not the number.
just built up.
I'm talking about millions.
Yeah. I mean, like a whole church built, the entire front cathedral just built of 100 dead people, at least I've seen. But underground, also Lyon, there's the crypts.
I'm talking about in basements. Now, one thing is, for somebody to take these bones into the basements, why would you take them there? What are you doing? Are you eating the bones? Did you eat the people? Why did you keep bones? What the hell is going on? Now, the thing is, I'm sending you a few. Now, when you see this, now, because many people found these things in the last 50 years, what they've done is the Vatican that controls these churches has decorated the bones to put them a bit more neatly. But actually, the bones are in a mess, like piled up, almost like that you're somebody who's messy and dirty, and like a dog or a cat eating through garbage, and then you just dump the bones. So that's how the bones were found. For example, in Stephen's Cathedral, in many places, like there's just thousands of bones under the Cathedral of Vienna. And they were fighting about that, and they're saying the Muslims, the Russians, and everybody else invaded. Yeah, and then the King of Poland, Jan Sobieski, he came to save Europe from Muslim invasion. Go and look at all his churches in Poland, all these skulls and bones in basements. What the hell were these people doing? I sent you a few pictures. Have you found them?
It's terrifying. Yeah, just hundreds, each just wall of skulls, just collaged and mosaic.
Oh, those things, they put them as decorations in the 19th century. Is because in the 19th century, what happened is many people, as people found them, let's say if I go into my local church, I'm going to find them. They're going to say, oh, we didn't know that was here. There was no room to bury these bones. So then they'll just make it into a decoration. They've turned it into a decoration to hide it. To hide it. Or actually, when the bones were discovered, they were actually found as a mess. You know, same like when you see a dog going through a pile of garbage, eating through the things, bones of all the meat. Actually, what I've sent you more than 10 pictures now. You should have had them. So this is the thing people are talking about, these free energy. Now, the thing is, they decorated these places to actually hide it. And they're saying, no, people came here to pray. But now, for example, if they're going to say people came here to play, for example, the Sedlec Cathedral in Bohemia is known as the Church of Skulls. Now, the strange thing is, inside that place, there's 70,000 skulls and of 70,000 people's skulls and bones there. Well, we've got a problem. The population of that place in the year 1700 was only 2,000 people. How the hell can you have 70,000 bones from the 17th century when only 2,000 people live there? Have you received the pictures? Have a look through the pictures.
Right, yeah. It's crazy. Just all these bodies, and then just piles. Actually, this one that's the scariest is just, you're right, like in the basement, just piles of bones, like it's lumber. Just tied together.
Have a look at the pictures I've given you. Now, have you and please take a look. I've sent you a few pictures.
Yeah,
and then you will see.
the wall of skulls, terrifying.
And-
Yeah, and these guys are supposed to save us. Interesting, and it is interesting, like the
Have you
idea
found them in
that these,
Facebook messages?
yeah,
I sent you many pictures.
yeah,
Yeah. Now the thing is, what people think is today they made them a bit neat. It seemed like you and me walking into a place, we found a mess. So actually, these bones were found in a mess. A mess. It seemed like garbage. So now they put them a bit neater because you and me, we're going to complain. You and me, we're going to say, what the hell are they doing here? So then they're saying, no, people came to meditate here. They're lying. It's because, for example, there was a cathedral, I forgot which one, the ordinary US soldiers found it after World War II in Austria. But the thing is, they tried to keep it a secret. But so many local people came saying, what the fuck? Or what the hell is this? They went crazy saying, what are all these bones doing here? Yeah, and it's like at the time there were bishops and priests. The U.S. Army had to protect them. Yeah, and there were practically people were saying, "What the hell are these things doing here?" There was a big outrage. So they wouldn't have reported it, but then in the end they reported it. The U.S. Army found it. Yeah, they were looking for something, and it was behind a hidden basement under a church in Vienna. So I think that is actually St. Stephen's Cathedral, but I forgot which one. It's in my book. I've forgotten off the top of my head. Yeah. Wow. So the thing is, we're not talking about a few. We're talking there's millions of bones like this underground in Europe, piled up skulls and bones, millions. I'm not talking about a few. I'm talking about millions. You see?
Yeah.
Millions of bones. So, have you actually received the pictures?
Yeah. I'm looking at them now. I'm just going through all of them, and it's just walls of bones, just crazy amounts. I've seen a lot of these in the past, and they said the Great Wall of China has bones in it, and everyone talks about the amount of people that died in the dark. They have all these excuses for this, but this is. You know, definitely when you look at it, this is art
they're trying to say it's the Dark Ages. Now, in my book, I pointed out that actually these bones were gathered together in the 16th and 17th century, mysteriously at the same time as the so-called Muslim Turkish invasion of Vienna in 1683. That these people were doing this, and then you can check it. They can't hide this information because the Muslims kept records. Yeah, but nobody wants to read the Muslim records. Okay, we can go to the Smithsonian. Yeah, the Smithsonian, they couldn't hide it. It's because there's too many records that ordinary people wrote. Yeah, that these people were killing people in the 16th, 17th century. And they were eating their meat. They were burning people in inquisitions. They were cooking them. They were eating them. That's what the inquisitions were about. But in history, they wrote down they were Gnostics, they were heretics. The truth is, it's like you and me. We want to have a meal. Forget a chicken sandwich from KFC. Yeah, let's bring those men from over there, and we're going to cook them.
Wow,
that's what they were doing. Yeah, I just sent it you. I just sent you a new page. The kings of England. They've modified the names of these kings and popes, but the thing is, it's known they were drinking blood. Have a look at it. Eating human remains for religious or medicine purposes. I could say Red Bull is like for a medicine purpose.
Wow, it's medical, yeah. It says, okay, I'm going to read it for everybody. It says, despite these insistent denials, the practice of eating human remains for religious or medicinal purposes was extremely prevalent in medieval and early modern European culture. It was studied by the Swiss physician Paracelsus. Is that right?
Yeah. What they've done is they added that bit on for you to think it's medicine. It's not medicine.
And other well-respected medical professionals, and used not only by the average gentryman, really used by the average gentryman who could afford medical care, but by kings such as Charles II of England.
You're going there having a glass of blood. Come on.
Pope Innocent
you call that medicine?
The ideology behind this practice was said to be influenced by the healing properties of the Eucharist. In fact, the general consensus seems to be that medicinal cannibalism was supported by the same ideas that supported the Eucharist. The human flesh contained healing powers, and the most effective way to access those powers was by eating those which contained them.
What they mean by healing powers is that blood is alive. So they normally drank the blood when it's alive. But the thing is, they're just saying it's medicine. It's not medicine. You're eating people. You're having a pint of blood. you're eating someone's leg. Now, the thing is, let me show you the sources of these things. I'm sending you the sources, then you can check it. That these are from even the so-called elites media can't deny it. I've sent you the Smithsonian, many other places, sources that you can check through it. So this is what these people were doing. And you can have a look that it reached its height in the 16th and 17th century when the so-called mega big Turkish invasions happened in the 16th and 17th century, or Muslim invasions of Europe. Because in Muslim records, you can go to Istanbul and other places, the Muslims have kept the tradition saying, these people, the Vatican and its boys, they were going around in their inquisitions, they're burning people, they were eating them. They were eating them, they're just drinking the blood. That's what they were having as a drink. This is what they were doing. And then the people were coming, many people who were so-called Protestants or Gnostics, yeah, came and said, we refuse to accept Christ as the Son of God, or we refuse to accept this and that. And they're using it as an excuse. They're actually eating us. We are the food. And that's why when you think about a global agenda for 2030 for vaccines, that everybody should be protected against 20 diseases, on average 10 or 20 vaccines, they're purifying everybody's blood right now.
Right. They talk about vaccine is the Latin root vacus.
Purifying your blood.
Well,
same like an animal.
Vacus means cattle. So they're making us all cattle.
Yes, and the thing is, have a look. I've sent you the sources so that you can check it. Smithsonian and other things, have a look. That they're just eating these dead bodies, everything. Who did it? The royalty, the priests, scientists, whoever, all these people, it's like the average middle upper class, they're just eating people. They're eating people.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's stated as acceptable for the average gentryman, but not the way they say it is. It's not just the average gentryman, also the royals. It's interesting, not just to say not just the royals, but average folk too would make more sense to me. Because of course, royals the average
free person, 80% of the people were not free; they were peasants. You got to remember, like you had to live on the land and be their slaves, and then all you did was eat. You grew bigger, and as it says there, young men were their favorites to eat, and young women. Right. Drinking their blood. Yeah.
Charles II. It's amazing. You think about the Libertine period, and
And the thing is, this is not so long ago. The 17th century is 300 years ago. This is not about vampires. We're talking about this is what these people were doing until the Ottoman Turkish invasion, 1683. And the thing is, the Holy Roman Emperor, I've forgotten his name. Yeah, he ran like a dog. They were eating people. And what have they got down in history? They were the savers of Christianity. Savers of what Christianity? These people, they called it the Eucharist. They were actually drinking blood.
Wow.
And the thing is, nobody, you can even check it. And then if the Muslims speak up, the Smithsonian isn't Muslim, or these records, that they even wrote it down, saying, hey, we had a pint of blood today. We killed a few of these villagers here. He was a agnostic. He was a Protestant. Yes.
Blood sausage is still very popular in Spain.
Yeah. And the thing is, then they switched to pork because pork tastes like humans. Yes. Or pork was not widespread. If you check before the year 1900, they cannot give a proper story why Germany had hardly any pigs for consumption.
Yeah.
Yes. And what they will say is that mysteriously, we don't know from where, but the British Empire and the Dutch Empire were supplying Germany with pork for the common villagers, or the villagers didn't eat pork. Then they say that all these pigs, they died in so-called wars between Germany and France in the 1870s. But the French army never even entered German soil, or basically on German territory. So how could German pigs have died? It means that pig was not part of the diet. And that's why when you look at the people in photographs or videos from 100 years ago, they're not that big, they're not that fat. Yeah, and now people are growing overweight. It's becoming a joke because of what they're eating. But the thing is, as I've shown, these things are all in my books. The book Jesus Christ, it goes through more about Christianity, and Skulls and Bones will go through it more. So as you've noticed, my books have become, I hope they're amazing now.
They're absolutely amazing. I can't wait to read the Skull and Bone book. I appreciate.
I'll send you. Yeah, I'll send you a few of the books for the background of this Skull and Bones,
Thank you.
because you won't be able to understand it without the background. Now, the thing is, my books are easy. Anatoly Fomenko goes through this in a lot more depth. He goes through in much deeper things. But now, as you can see, the history of the Balkans, because you are from there, Serbia, and the history of Croatia, Saint Stephen, the so-called savior of Serbia, all this history is a lie. All this history, they made it up. Yes, they made it up to show the fake so-called Turkish invasion. Can you imagine going to Istanbul today, trying to raise an army and tell people, please come over to Germany to help the Germans? Vienna is the gateway. Get rid of these people. They're drinking people's blood. They're cooking us, man. They're cooking us, yo.
Right. And then
This is
it's
what
interesting. The
happened.
Soviet Union had to make these posters to tell people not to eat children. That it was wrong to eat your children. I
And
mean,
and now in the modern world, many people don't have a look. For example, Bulgaria. Now, if you look at European Union records, after Bulgaria entered the European Union, they have records for 900,000 or around 1 million people from Bulgaria came to Europe. But Bulgaria has got a record that minimum 15% of its population has left the country. Minimum. And if you go there yourself, you'll notice that probably more than 15% of the country is left because they've entered the EU, that they can go and work there. There's millions of people that are disappearing all the time. So from so-called migrants, from war zones, that nobody seems to know where they've gone. I spoke to somebody in Tunisia several months ago. Their brother went to Europe, these so-called migrants, and disappeared. And they think their brother's working and happy. These stories are common. Millions of people are disappearing, which just doesn't make sense. Even 20, 30 years ago in America, they said 38% of children that went missing never came back. They never found them. Now they say over 80% are found. Yeah, so the thing is, the data doesn't even make sense, but we're talking about thousands of people are disappearing in so-called border migrations. And then Europe's population, mysteriously, even with so-called millions of Polish who came in the last 30 years, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Greek, all of them went to work in Western Europe. And I live in England. And in England, the population doesn't seem to be going up that much. England, France, and Germany. In fact, the population is going down. And not just them, they're bringing so many refugees from Libya that included bogus refugees that came from many African countries and from Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria. They brought millions of people, and still Europe's population is going down. Isn't this suspicious? Millions of migrants you can see in America, and then you think, where have all the local people in America? Where are they going? All these people from South and Latin America and coming in from other places. Yeah, the maths just doesn't add up. And the drinking blood, who said this process stopped? Who said they stopped it? I'll give you an example now. Imagine if you're 60 years old, and if you start drinking the blood of children 4 or 5 years old, that blood has growth in it. The blood cells have growth. They grow. If you keep drinking it for 1 year and your body is 60 or 70 years old, what will happen to your body? Your body will become young again. Yes, that's a fact. So how old are some of these people? If they've been drinking blood for centuries, who said they died?
well, some interesting characters like Edward Kelly and John Dee working on the Philosopher's Stone, talking about not just making gold, but the sacrificial power or atonement necessary to make a Philosopher's Stone that makes you
and
immortal.
what does the New Testament say? Without blood sacrifice, there is no forgiveness. Yes. Who wrote these things? And then the Old Testament was written later. It says the same thing. Now, the strangest thing is now, anybody who's there's going to be many people. That's why I recommend my books for the full story. They're going to say that, they found no room in these cemeteries. So that's why they just dump the skulls and bones in basements. Imagine dumping your dad in a basement, chop his skulls and bones up. Then they're saying, for example, there's a skull and bones church in northern Italy. And then they're saying there was a war here in 1880, a battle. And the soldiers who died, we put their skulls and their bones here to remember everything inside the church, 1880s. Now, for them to do that, soldiers who died, they had their clothes on and everything. The battle was only a few days. What they did is they must have burnt the meat, took out their tongues and their brain and all the meat from inside their skulls, washed everything, and they must have burnt the meat off the bones, or you can't take the meat off the bones very easily, just to put them in that museum. Is this what, and you believe this history? Yes. People believe it.
It's outrageous.
People believe this.
So
it doesn't make sense.
So some of these characters, so I was looking at that time, like Charles II, Queen Elizabeth, you've got John Dee and Ed Kelly, and they're involved with the Voynich manuscript, at least allegedly, and this kind of changing of history in the 1700s. They would have been prime candidates for this. Do you think that do you think that the British court was trying to introduce this or keep this secret?
Now the strange thing is, if you look at the history of England, England was invaded from Holland in the 17th century, 1688, by a man called William of Orange. The history sounds like it's bogus. Now in England, mysteriously, there's lots of churches and cathedrals in the countryside that have been destroyed. So whoever took over the churches, whoever took over the churches changed their function. Now, if anybody wants to understand the true function of churches, now, as I said, they said that there's all these skulls and bones in basements of churches, and they're claiming we couldn't find no place to bury these people. The cities got overcrowded. But many of these places, you could check the population in the 17th century, there's hardly anybody there. So that means the history is a lie. And then let's go to Muslim cities now. Mysteriously, the Muslims found more room to bury the dead, and there's millions of Muslims, but in Europe, they didn't find it. Or somebody's going to say, but there's more Christians. No, Latin America is Christian recently. Take away the Latin Americans, then there's more Muslims. And take away the atheists, it means there's more Muslims anyway. Yeah, but forget that. This is not about numbers. Now, the thing is, why can the Muslims find places to bury the people and they didn't dump skulls and bones? And then let me just give you that Italian one. This will make you actually very suspicious that they took out the brains from the skull. Let me tell you, which church is this? San Marino della Battaglia, Church of San Martino della Battaglia di Cenzano del Garda in Italy. This place is decorated with skulls and bones, decorations, yeah? And the thing is, they say that this is from the Battle of Solferino, Napoleon III, 1859. Instead of burying the dead bodies, I'm telling you now, imagine right now, right? Instead of burying people, I'm cutting open your leg, taking the blood off, everything in the meat off, taking the bone out. I'm removing your tongue, your cheeks. I'm cutting everything up until I've totally taken out the skull, just to put it inside the church as a museum. This is what they're telling us. People just go there and they think, oh, it's so sad. These are the bones, so sad, a bad will happen. Nobody is imagining that they're telling us that the church came along, took out the blood and took off the meat. Now, another thing is World War I, the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah, it was the worst battle. Was it the Bulge? I've forgotten the name of the battle. I think it was. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I've forgotten the name. Now they've got that. They've got this memorial for it, a big church in France. Now they buried half the bodies, but the other half of the bodies, check this out. They were taking the bodies. They took the uniforms off. They took the hats off. They removed the meat mysteriously, and they've kept the skulls and the bones in the basement of that memorial, which doesn't make sense. Does that make sense to you? How the hell could you take the uniforms off and everything's off? And they can't say stray dogs, stray pigs came to eat these dead bodies, because what happened is in the trenches, the soldiers were being replaced. If somebody died, they took their body away. They were burying as many as they can, but mysteriously, thousands of them were not buried, but we've just got their skulls and bones.
No, we've seen the trench wars, World War I, just wiping out just so many, like every able-bodied young man from all the villages.
Now the thing is, the story behind that, I've written it in a book called Orphan Trains, where I show what was the reason, what they did for the urbanization process after the Ottoman invasion of Europe in the 17th century. Something happened that the people changed their policy. Because Anatoly Fomenko shows that when the invasions of Vienna happened, they turn around and say that Russia, that came with the Ottomans, actually lost. But the truth is they actually won. that the world order was on the retreat. That's why after the 17th century, the drinking of blood and everything slowly disappeared. That by the time open cameras came and television, it went underground after the 19th century. That doesn't mean it's gone. Who said they stopped? There is no evidence they stopped. Whoever these people were, mysteriously stopping their diet, drinking blood and eating human meat. Who said that stopped? They're telling us it stopped. And there's millions of people disappearing. And then nobody can explain World War I, yes, that somebody just had shrapnel on his shoulder. And then the rest of his body, they took his clothes off and everything off and the rest of the meat just to get his bones. It just doesn't make sense that they piled up the bones there and then they put it in that memorial and half the bodies are buried. It doesn't make sense. And if they're going to say there were so many people dying in this battlefield, what about in the battlefields on the Muslim territories? Mysteriously, the Muslims managed to bury every single one. Yeah. And then there was they had so many soldiers after the war, they could have buried every single one. But no, they decided to keep the skulls and the bones and they put it in this memorial. I've forgotten the name, that you can go and see. Not all the bones, but quite a lot of them. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
It is interesting
So,
also, like,
Andreas?
looking at how England was transformed. The language was replaced. You can see Frisian's gone. The new Gaulish French words that are introduced. And like Greenwich and everything. There's still the fact that the names of places are still, when you read them, you can't pronounce them in English. You have to pronounce them in British because they come from the old language. All of England.
Yes. Yeah, they've changed all the history, unfortunately. Now, Andreas, let's leave it at that. I'm sure you've got enough things.
Yeah,
Now,
I was gonna say thank you. It's been a whirlwind. This is a good one. I appreciate the time you took to talk to me. You should definitely plug your books more. I think people need to find them.
Yeah, the books. I've got them under Tartaria by David Ewing Jr. Yeah, and there's some books that are circulating online that people have got them in PDF form. Now, those books were the originals that I gave out to people free. Many of these books had mistakes in spelling and they've been updated. The ones that are published are the ones that have been updated with more information. It's because the ones that I give out free before was actually because I'm checking what people say, what information to keep, what not to keep, what's necessary. Like, for example, if I'm talking about churches, people will recommend to me and say, hey, you forgot this point. This point is too common. Everybody knows it anyway. You don't need this, so remove that. Yeah, then you can put extra information in the book. Because when you publish a book, you don't want too many pages. Yeah. So the thing is, I sent you books before. The thing is, I'll send you the new links now for all the 15 books. There's 15 now, and they're available in 20 languages. By the way, they're in 20 languages now. Can you believe it, or more?
That's pretty impressive. I'm glad that you're doing this. It's really important. The world needs to hear this.
They're available in Serbian, Polish, Serbian, Polish, many languages.
Someone was saying, they're like, why is Tartary such a big thing now? I'm like, well, I think part of the reason is you're putting these books out and people are finding them. Because I know a lot of my friends have found a Ewing Jr. book out there. So you're doing your work.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, for example, somebody can read something or look at one video. People shouldn't just base their opinions on one thing. It's like me, I'm always learning. I know I don't know everything, so I've got to learn more things.
Yeah, I like how your books are showing.
Have to learn more things.
Your books were showing how your approach and study are. The fact that you're showing your Google searches as a site, so it's a very easy way to look through stuff.
Yeah, I made it so easy. Instead of somebody just putting something online, not making a video, not showing the reference, talking quickly, people don't pause and have a look. Like, that's how many videos are made. But the videos do help. But the thing is, people shouldn't just believe without checking.
Right.
The thing is, we've got a serious problem, and it looks like now that there may be some organizations, religious organizations, political organizations that are now making fake videos, and they've got fake people out there to on purpose mislead people. Yeah, that they've added truth with lies, that they've done this deliberately now. There is a deliberate campaign now, because the thing is, what people have done now, that the subject of Tartaria has moved away from actual research. Actual research was by Anatoly Fomenko. Then if you go on Wikipedia and other places, they condemn Anatoly Fomenko as a Russian nationalist. How can he be a Russian nationalist when he is showing that the Quran was the system, and the Quranic language was the main language in Europe and the world, and that religious system was in Russia and Tartaria and throughout Europe and the world? Does that sound like a Russian nationalist to you? This is what they're saying. So what they've done is they've condemned him, but they don't want to say why they condemned him, or people are going to think, damn, did he say Arabic? Did he say the Quran? So the thing is, this does not mean I'm supporting Islam. I've made it clear that modern Islam has got sects and they've got their ways and their systems and beliefs. Yeah, people follow whatever they want. I'm looking at the Quran as a historical document.
Yeah,
this is what I'm looking at. Yeah. Yes, and from what I have found, and from what other researchers have found, yeah, they found that the history in that book is totally different than the history that we are being told by nation states all around the world. And this is the big difference. Now, this is what we found. Now, that's the bottom line on my position regarding what religion is and the Quran that I'm showing, that my research is based on research based, that I'm questioning. I'm looking for evidence. I'm not willing to go out there and think I'm going to believe this and I follow this. About me personally, do I believe in a God? The sun is moving, the wind is moving, there's forces out there, they exist. There is a creator because they're in a created system. I believe in that creator, simple as. Now, that is the definition of God in the Quran also. So anybody who believes in that definition means that they're following the same definition of the Quran, and that means systematically, in the eyes of the Quran, they're classified as Muslims. It means followers of peace. Anyone who believes in peace, who believes in that God who is the creator, who believes that no human is the child of God and that humans are humans, then that person believes in the same religion as Islam. Islam means peace. There you go. And then it says the Messiah, even in the Bible, it says the Messiah will bring shalom all over the world. The word Islam actually is salam. Now they have the letter H added on. Islam Arabic removes the letter H. Now Hebrew is a language that mysteriously people started speaking after the 1880s, and the Israelite Alliance colonial schools by the British and the French and the German and Dutch empires, mysteriously found so many orphans in many countries, and they brought them into these Israelite schools, and their descendants are now called modern Jewish people who follow Judaism in many places around the world. Actually, that's a long topic. Professor Henry Atslan goes into it in more depth, showing that Judaism came after Islam and came after Christianity. Only in the last few centuries. Somebody invented it. Oh, he's got videos online as well, Professor Henry Atslan. I think a French institute put his lectures on, so you can find it. Anyway, Andreas, let's leave it at that. Yeah?
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time, David Ewing Jr.
It was great talking to you after 2 years.
Oh my gosh, it's been a wild one. I appreciate this though. I hope everyone does a deep dive into this. This was really good.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.